Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and this video is going to be another one about the Brexit-Japan trade deal talks with cheese, because everything's better with cheese on it. And so the sticking point in terms of the collapse of the talks between the UK and Japan, not necessarily a long-term collapse, but a collapse for the moment, seems to be cheese. And a lot of people have been poking me on social media and here to talk about it. So here we go. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So yeah, a lot of people are saying that the talks collapsed because Liz Truss, who is representing the UK government, refused to back down on the issue of Stilton exports to Japan. Now, I'm going to warn you, this is a silly topic. And the video is inevitably going to get a little bit silly from time to time. This is not my fault, this is your fault for asking for it, or at least those of you who did ask for this. Now, the UK produces and exports a lot of cheese, and I am a massive fan on a personal level of almost all types of British cheese. I'm not a huge fan of Red Leicester, but I will eat it. Though I have to say the best cheddar I ever tasted was actually Canadian. And of course, being from Yorkshire, I do indeed have a bit of Wensleydale with my Christmas cake, though I did forget to get some for Yorkshire Day recently. And a bit of a consideration for our American cousins. When we say cheese, what we mean is pressed curds. We do not mean that barely edible plastic that you ruin otherwise perfectly good burgers with. Now, although we shift a lot of cheese in the UK around the world, the value of our cheesy exports to Japan only amounts to about £100,000 worth. Now, a lot of people are saying this is a bit silly to be blocking a trade deal worth billions over, isn't it? Especially with our Brexit-obsessed government being desperate for something, anything, to show that we are in business post-Brexit. However, it is not as silly as it sounds. Or rather, it is as silly as it sounds, but because of the Brexit mindset, not because of the cheese thing. Not because Liz Truss has an unhealthy obsession with cheese exports, even though she does. She banged on about them a lot in the past in her capacity as an elected lunatic. Essentially, Boris Johnson needs a trade deal in some way, no matter how small, and it has to be better than the equivalent that Japan have with the EU. We need to negotiate greater market access for something, and our cheese exports would be absolutely brilliant than the EU managed. If they can do that, the government can sell it as a massive win. Yes, really. Think I'm joking? You think I'm joking? A while ago, Boris Johnson was taking part in a daily briefing where he was supposed to be telling us how he intended to stop more of us dying from the COVID pandemic. At least that's what he should have been doing. What he was actually doing was waving around a packet of something called Tim Tams to show the benefits of a trade deal with Australia. These are more talks, by the way, that are not exactly going according to plan. And yes, this is exactly what happened. I didn't see it live. I saw an image. I thought it was photoshopped. I think a lot of people must have thought it was photoshopped. It wasn't. He actually produced this bag of what seemed to be chocolate biscuits from down under to sell the benefits of a Brexit deal with Australia. Now, I didn't know what they were either. I asked my girlfriend. She said they're like penguins. So I said, oh, is there a joke printed on the packet? She said no. So actually what they are is inferior penguin bars. And for those who don't know what penguins are, they're apparently a superior version of Tim Tams because, you know, they come with a joke, which usually takes the form of a pun regarding penguins. And if you don't know what a Tim Tam or a penguin is, then at least the ones that are like penguins are like a sort of triple chocolate biscuit that you wouldn't have thought was a really good reason as a selling point for Brexit. Especially as we could apparently get them in the UK as members of the EU anyway. Boris Johnson just seemed to want us to get them a bit cheaper. And I feel that you still think I'm joking. So I feel that I need to...
We send you penguins and you send us with reduced tariffs, these wonderful Arnott's Tim Tams. How long can the British people be deprived of the opportunity to have Arnott's Tim Tams at a reasonable price?
Ladies and gentlemen, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland flogging Australian biscuits. There we go. So, yes, the point is that they will sell the stupidest thing as a Brexit benefit, knowing full well that Brexit supporters will cheer it on. Apparently, it is much less silly to be happy that we might be able to buy penguins at a slightly reduced price from Australia than to admit that Brexit maybe hasn't turned out as they had hoped. So the idea that the government would really like to get a deal that involves some greater market access for our cheese than our European neighbours seems to be a serious prize for the government and something worth standing firm over, at least for a while. And it has to be said that Britain isn't the only world-class producer of cheese. A number of other European countries, including EU countries, produce some very popular cheese. In fact, my personal favourite is actually Danish Blue. And I'm a big fan of Gouda, Edam and Parmesan as well. Not very keen on French cheese, I have to say, I'm afraid. Most of it is far too creamy for me. There's the odd one, but most of it... But I'm in a minority. It sells very well. Very popular indeed. In fact, better than our own. A number of European countries are net exporters of cheese, including France, of course. We are not in the UK. We are a net importer. Now, this may well be because we consume a lot more cheese than others, rather than the world failing to appreciate the superiority of Stilton over Camembert. I don't know. I didn't look it up. It's not important. What is important is that Japan, like the UK, is also a net importer of cheese, and coincidentally by the same amount. And quite a lot of that cheese, of course, comes from the EU. And as I talked about earlier this week, the Japanese do not really have an appetite, see what I did there, for providing us with a better deal than the EU on any goods. Apart from anything else, the EU-Japanese deal means, there in the deal, that if Japan were to do this, say, it would be pointless and it would be a right old hassle for Japan because they would then have to conduct a review at the end of which they'd have to give the EU the same market access anyway. So at the end of it, we still wouldn't end up with a better deal than Japan, or than the EU, with Japan. Because all we'd actually be doing is negotiating a better deal for the EU in Japan. That's nice of us, isn't it? Because that's the thing about trade deals. They tend to include clauses that deal with other trade deals that you might make with other countries. And basically, if you're a big important market, like let's say the EU, the most important market on earth, they can say, you'd better not give any of our competitors a better deal, otherwise we won't be happy. That's baked in, that's written in there. It's written in the deal. In addition, if we don't get a trade deal with Japan, now I have to point out here, I don't know, but I'd be very surprised if the EU were just standing on the sidelines over this. Surely they're involving themselves, chirping in Japan's ears. Because if we don't get a trade deal with Japan, then that means that other cheese exporters in Europe, and there are a lot of them, would be in pole position to increase the amount they can sell in Japan, because it would be more competitively priced than British cheese. Now, British cheese is very popular in Japan, or increasingly popular, but those World Trade Organization tariffs that the Brexiteers seem very happy to be facing will render our cheese, which I would have thought must already have a fairly hefty price tag just with the cost of transport halfway across the world, to be real luxury items. But this is also why it's important for us to get a trade deal with Japan that includes cheese. Asia is a growing market for cheese for us, and there are a precious few of those at the moment. So the situation, as far as I can see, is as follows. Correct me if I'm wrong. 1. Boris Johnson wants to get a deal that in some capacity is better than the EU's with Japan. 2. Cheese would be a brilliant prize because Europe as a continent is the king of cheese. And the UK is far from being the biggest player on the cheese world stage. But against that, 3, Japan don't want to entertain the notion of giving us better market access than to the EU on anything because they'd only have to increase the deal with the EU anyway. And they certainly don't want to mess about with something as important to the EU market as cheese. And also 4, surely Japan know that the UK cannot afford to die on this hill. We can't afford it. We need the trade deal for everything else as well. World Trade Organization tariffs will finish us. Now, I don't really want to follow that line of thinking to its inevitable conclusion, because that inevitable conclusion is that the UK are trapped between the devil and the deep blue sea. Because on the one hand, we know that we can't get a better deal than the EU, because then Japan would just have to increase that share for the EU. And you would think of it, okay, if we can't get the deal on cheese, isn't it better to preserve the rest of our trade with Japan and sacrifice something? But then that means sacrificing something. Well, there's the deep blue sea. On the other hand, people are going to compare the deal we get with Japan with the EU's deal, because there is an actual trade deal between the EU and Japan. It's very easy to compare. And if they just see all the way through that it's actually worse for us, then there is just a danger that Brexit looks a bit silly, because we'll have a worse trade deal. And there's the devil. So the inevitable conclusion is that Boris Johnson is buggered either way. But I am not an international trade negotiator. There may be little intricacies that I am not appreciating, that I am not seeing. And I have not seen an in-depth analysis on this specific issue by someone who is an international trade negotiator. But that being said, I cannot see how Boris Johnson and Liz Truss can win this one. Because, like I said, Japan must know that we are desperate for something, because are they really going to die on the hill for cheese when they're going to lose that anyway, and they'd lose everything else we export to Japan? So those are my thoughts on the fact that Brexit will also make it more difficult for us to educate Asia on the benefits of Welsh rarebit and Wensleydale with fruitcake, to say nothing of the benefits of Stilton and beef sandwiches. Very nice. Layer of mustard, beef, Stilton, sweet pickle. Unless, of course, you're a vegetarian, in which case you may choose not to have that. But, you know, there you go. Sorry. So I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.